Hi guys, welcome to the second installment of F2, which is Microbes in the Environment, or something like that. Microbes and the Environment, close enough. As been already talked about, the nitrogen cycle and the role of microbes in the environment. I'm going to go and talk about pollution in waterways. Now, the sewage is produced by us humans is very high in nitrates and phosphates, and it actually has a lot of diseases and bacteria and stuff. But if it's released to the water that we use, whether it's for drinking, bathing, or anything, diseases can spread like cholera and typhoid. But even if it's released into the pond or something that none of us use, it's still ecologically very bad for the system, for the environment. There's a step-by-step process which occurs. So I'm just gonna go through it. So the first thing that happens is the saprotrophic bacteria and fungi feed on the sewage. So the organic material in the sewage is rich in nutrients for the fungi and the bacteria. So they really grow a lot. They multiply and it's basically a source of food. So they multiply really quickly. Now these now when they proliferate, okay, they really grow in numbers, and these bacteria and fungi actually require a lot of oxygen to for them. So they take in a lot of oxygen, and this is this is quite bad for the system because this means that other organisms in the river don't have enough oxygen. So the concentration of oxygen in the river actually decreases because of this. And when this is step two. So when these bacteria and fungi like take in a lot of oxygen and the oxygen level drops, the fish in the river and many like crustacean and invertebrates that are there that are like pretty dependent on oxygen levels at high oxygen levels die. If it's a pond, they die. If it's like a river, they move downstream or something like that. They move or they die. And this is a cycle again. So when these guys die, this leads to a buildup of ammonia and again more nitrates and phosphates. But the thing that's different here is that first the ammonia gets converted to a nitrate, and because of the death and decay of these fish and invertebrates are there, there's a lot of extra nutrients available. Nutrients that the saprotrophic bacteria and fungi don't use. So this, but algae do. So with this increased concentration of nutrients, algae reproduce rapidly. I mean, really quickly. As you can see in the pictures, it's here, the top left, and when when the lake has an algae bloom, it's completely green, as you can see. And when the algae produce rapidly, it's known as eutrophication. That's really key. You really need to know this whole, I guess, step-by-step process. Now, algae are plants, so they photosynthesize. So when you have a lot of algae, it's quite good for the river. Large amounts of algae when there are large amounts of algae, they literally restore the oxygen content that has been lost due to the bacteria, the large number of bacteria there. So the river returns to normal. And there's like a question mark in the next step. Now, the algae can die again, and the same cycle occurs where and the river takes longer to recover because when they die again, the saprotrophic bacteria feed on them, and then the algae come again, and then they die again. So it's quite it's a quite intensive cycle, so it's best just not to let any pollution occur. Now, one of the biggest causes for eutrophication is farmers, and this is because they use fertilizers for their crops, and they're really blamed for it, which sometimes can be quite correct. Now, in fertilizers, there's a lot of nitrates and phosphates, and this is causes the algae in the water to proliferate again. They multiply because there's increased nitrate and phosphate. Now, as you can see from the pictures, when you have algae, they cover the whole surface of the water. Now, this is really bad for other plants because then sunlight does not reach the other plants that are in the water. So they die. If they And then again, when the other plants die, the bacteria decompose the dead plants and there's a decrease in the oxygen level. And again, the fish and the high oxygen level organisms that are there die, move away or die. Now, now another thing is now that's done. We're finished with eutrophication. We're going to move on to the treatment of sewage. How our sewage is treated and cleaned, and this actually depends heavily on the bacteria that's there, the saprotrophic bacteria. Now, one of the ways we treat bacteria is the use of trickle filter beds, and this is a trickle filter bed. It basically consists of a large tank containing a layer of gravel or clinker, and these are like, as you can see, they're small pebbles, and if you're in chemistry you know why it's better to have small pebbles rather than a large slab, because it provides a very large surface area for the bacteria to grow. Now, as you can see, you have sprinklers right here, and this pours the raw sewage onto the rocks, and this environment needs to be very well aerated, because if it's not, then you don't get the oxygen. The oxygen does not go into bacteria and then they die. So it needs to be very well aerated. And then the bacteria that's there on the rock, when the sewage is being sprayed on the bacteria, um, they break it down. They break down all the inorganic compounds in the water into compounds like nitrates and phosphates, and that and then everything just falls to the bottom to the collection, and then it's flown. Now the problem with this way is that the purified water has really high concentration of nitrate and phosphate, and you can't really drink that and stuff. So what usually happens is they get sent to a second system where that they get rid of the nitrogen and phosphorus. Of course, but first you'd have to strain the water to say, and so the bacteria fall as sludge to the bottom. The second way is using a reed bed system, and this is a little bit more efficient. So reeds, these plants, they're grown on sand or gravel, and of course they need oxygen as well. And basically, the sewage water flows, okay? It flows through here, and on the roots of the plants, they have the bacteria there, okay? So the bacteria break down the our raw sewage into nitrates and phosphates. But the better thing is that as when they break it down, now these reeds can take up the nitrates and phosphates and grow. So This kind of eliminates the problem with the trickle beds system, and these reeds can then be used as fertilizers again because they're high in nitrates and phosphates. The only problem with this system is that it needs to be very big so it can be effective. Otherwise, you kind of have to limit the flow of sewage. Otherwise, it's not that efficient if it's done like in small. So yeah, and then as you can see at the end, the purified water with pretty much has nothing in it flows out. Like it's clean, completely clean. The next topic that we have to do is biomass. Just touch up on the reed beds. We need to know but the both systems very well. And it's not that it's hard, it's just it's pretty easy. And I think the picture on this PowerPoint's a lot better than the one in the book. It doesn't really tell you what it does. So now on to biofuels. Sorry, biomass for fuels. So you have biomass, which is in the form of wood and agricultural waste, such as manure, and this is actually a very good alternative fuel. And a lot of people are using, since it's an alternative fuel, they're looking at it because we're kind of running low on fossil fuel reserves, and you want to reduce our dependence if there's ever a supply shock. Yeah. So biofuels are basically you're converting biomass into ethanol or methane. So any of the material you use, you convert it into ethanol or methane, and that's basically your biofuel right there. You can do this on an industrial scale, domestic scale, really small scale, or like industrial scale, which is like really big. So the waste product of like burning or using the biomass fuel is methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas, if you didn't know, so it's pretty bad, but it's an alternative fuel nonetheless. The first thing that happens is that the straw are fed into a bioreactor and they decompose anaerobically, and these bacteria, of course, saprotrophic bacteria, they break down the organic material, and the stuff that remains is actually a pretty good fertilizer. Then these bacterias produce different enzymes that digest these organic material in each stage into complex carbohydrates, fats, and into simpler compounds. The organic material is first converted into organic acids and ethanol by anaerobic through acidogenic bacteria, which they're naturally in manure. Then you have the acetogenic bacteria, which use the organic acids and alcohol to produce acetate, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. Acetate, just for another person, is ethanoate. And finally, the methanogenic bacteria produce methane either from carbon dioxide and hydrogen or by breaking down the acetate. As you can see, this is one of the most important reaction that occurs, so I've labeled it here. So carbon dioxide plus hydrogen gas gives methane and water, or ethanoic acid plus ethanoic acid decomposes to methane and carbon dioxide. Now, as you can see in this tank, a tank is kept here. This is where the organic material comes down. This is the slurry, but as you can see, the last stage is the methane or ethanol, or pretty much methane. So, and this rises to the top. Now, the reaction is not 100% efficient. It produces about 70% methane and 30% carbon dioxide. But this biogas that's right there can be burned as a renewable fuel, or can and this can provide electricity, and this slurry can be used as a fertilizer. Now, if I was to put it in a flowchart, you have the biomass, or the fresh organic matter, just to go over what happens. Then you have the acidogenic bacteria, which converts into soluble organic matter. Then you have acetogenic bacteria, which convert into acetate and hydrogen. Okay, and then you have the most important, which is the methanogenic bacteria, which convert it into biogas, methane, and the slurry. The slurry can be used for fertilizer. Now, this step-by-step process is very important, and it highlights the whole concept of biofuels. And we are done. That is the end of F2. Thanks to Benel and me, and yeah, we're done. Moving on to F3.